think repositioning your emergency services is really heading to the right direction, because they are not only managing disasters, what they are talking about, also managing the risk of disasters.
I'm really quite impressed with what I have heard, actually, because what I'm starting to see emerge is a more consistent narrative around people. Each of the speakers, or many of the speakers that I've spoken to, are starting to come together or converge on certain themes around interoperability. So there seems to be a greater acceptance of an all hazards approach, and that emergency services are but one part of the whole of government response to emergency management. There's also almost a shared understanding now of the importance of risk and how that fits into almost a virtuous circle. So you're basically getting a knowledge of the risks, working out your priorities for risk treatment, ostensibly your mitigation, and that feeds into making communities more resilient. And I think what's coming through for me from a number of the speakers is almost a common conceptual model of how the future might take us. I think, I hope that there'll be less importance placed on individual agencies and much greater emphasis focusing on how agencies can work together, whether they be in the volunteer sector, the career sector, whether they be different types of agencies, i.e. police, fire, emergency services, or whether indeed they come from right across government, the health sector, the transport sector, the environmental sector, all working together, making sure that they've got a place in a common picture. And I think that those themes for me are coming through quite strongly, supporting the notion of a shared way of going forward, and I think that's really good.
I work in what they call maritime environmental emergencies, so emergencies to do with ships, oil spills, chemical spills at sea, where I guess historically sat to the side of the traditional emergency management agencies, and a particular, I guess, reform in our area is actually to come back or align ourselves a lot more and integrate more with the emergency management sector.
It's getting to a point where the complexity and size of these incidents, we actually need to pull in everyone we can to actually get a better result and better outcome, but it's also around by increasing their level of resilience and understanding is we hopefully will in the longer term reduce the number of outbreaks.
A very unique aspect of the response system for maritime emergencies is the role or the partnerships that we actually have with the industries that I guess create the hazard or create the threat. So the oil industry, the shipping industry and the port industry, and how we have a partnership agreement for response with them rather than an adversarial or regulated approach. And what I want to get across is this is a way of doing multi-sectoral management of incidents, but it goes all the way back to how you plan, how you relate to them and how you build the relationships from a governance level down to your training levels.
Certainly there's an undercurrent of the notion of continuity and resilience. There's a notion of the Sendai framework, following on from the Hyoga framework, and a notion of how joined up thinking can only improve the way that we work as a nation, and certainly mutual aid support across borders requires us to have definitely deeper ideas, implemented ideas about how we work together in common ways. It's always been done in terms of mutual aid cross-border as needed, but the notion of joining local, regional, state and federal in that continuity of policy thinking, that's an emergent theme. It's been touched on in previous AFAC conferences over the years that I've been to, but we're at a stage now where there is a need to respond to the Sendai work, just recently completed, and that requires the joined up policy thinking from local to federal. That's a common theme that's emerging.
One of the things that I'll be taking back is, yes, we're on the right track, but we've got still a long way to go. We've only just begun to do some of the internal things that we need to do to set ourselves up to earn that right to grow. And so very much on our agenda, we'll be looking at our strategy, checking our strategy, making sure we're on the right path and earning that right to move into the next horizon, which is very much about joined up services with that whole range of both state, local government, NGOs, charities, that whole remit. And I think I'm starting to see a flavour a much more flavoursome approach in the conference that people are now, not for the first time, but a majority. There's some weight. There's some critical mass gaining around the philosophical approach of joined up services moving towards interoperability.